should be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. I ended up going into wrestling more than I meant to. Whoops. Sorry. Like I said, it's the road to WrestleMania, guys. What do you want from me? It's our high holy days. So after this music break, you know what? I've realized something that this show, it's kind of a vehicle for me to rant and ramble. And oftentimes those rants, they take on a bit of an angry twinge. This week, I'm gonna title this episode right now. It's John is cheerful about things, and we're gonna talk about more things that I'm cheerful about after this quick musical interlude. I'm cheerful about this music. I love this song. My favorite one that I put on the show. I swear, I will never not groove to this tune. I absolutely, like, you know, Mon Plaisir, if you are ever listening to this show, my friend, you wrote a very, very good tune here with this one. I really, really enjoy it. Speaking of tunes that I really enjoy, if you're listening to this on Monday, tonight, I'm going to go see... two of my favorite musical acts from when I was growing up. You know, when I was sort of right at the right age for it, you know, junior high and into senior high, Canadian music, man, was really phenomenal. Of course, unfortunately, one of the bigger news items in Canadian music right now is that Headley is the band is facing some allegations of sexual impropriety. You know, surprise, surprise, famous white dudes are being kind of gross to women. We've covered that many times on this show. We won't go into it too deeply here, other than to say I never really cared for Headley. Like they never really wrote music for me. So, it's kind of gross that they wrote music for impressionable young women, basically. And, well, you know, Jacob Hogarth's accused of rape, so that's fun. But you know what? We're getting away from that. Like I said, John's being cheerful about things today. Yeah, this tonight, if you're listening to this when I release this, tonight I am going to go see Our Lady Peace and Matthew Good. I think I mentioned on the show right when I got the tickets for Christmas that Our Lady Peace was probably my favorite band for many, many years. I kind of got into them right around one of their more experimental albums, which was Spiritual Machines, which was this whole like Ray Kurzweil, like Singularity inspired concept album that was, what is being human versus what's being a machine, especially when there's a chance that we may reach the singularity and we'll all be downloaded into little USB drives someday, and our consciousness will be able to sort of live on forever. Man, you know what? Like I've gone back and forth on whether or not I think that is worthwhile. If you know me, I'm not somebody who really believes or puts much stock into the idea of an afterlife. I guess you would say I'm an atheist. It's one of those things for me where I have a hard time even categorizing myself as an atheist. I just don't in particular believe in any interpretation of God that I have been presented with, I guess. I think that there's something to be said about how sort of the universe is mysterious and crazy and wild, and we we have a certain capacity as humans to be able to understand things. Wow, this got deep all of a sudden. We have a certain capacity to understand things as humans, and whether or not at the top of that is just random chance, or if it's some sort of spiritual being, I don't know. I don't think that I ever will know. I don't think that human beings will ever have the capacity to know. In truth, I'm really tangenting off of this concert, but I actually just started watching the Good Place, which is the same executive producer of Parks and Recreation, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. Mike Schur, and stars Kristen Bell and Ted Danson, and man, I've really only watched 1 or 2 episodes of it so far, but really funny, really enjoyable. Seems to have a good heart, and as a show, and really enjoying it. I think that it's going to be something that I'm going to enjoy. I think there's only been 2 seasons so far. Hopefully, it's something that's given the sort of run that it deserves. I think Parks and Rec got the kind of run that it deserved. Maybe could have done with another season, but I think anything beyond 7 would have been maybe too much for that show. I think it was perfect in its own way. Anyhow, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I got into Our Lady Peace around the time that they released that conceptual album, and they've got this great back catalog. A lot of their newer stuff really isn't necessarily up my alley, but they kind of seem to be getting back to their roots. It's only like 2 of the original members, Rain Maida, the singer, and Duncan Coates, the bassist, left. Jeremy Taggart, who you may know from his podcast with Jonathan Torrens, who played J-Rock on Trailer Park Boys. Since I know I have some American listeners, and that's going to be the only reason that you're going to know the name Jonathan Torrens. For those of us in Canada, of course, we know television with TV Jonathan Torrens, and of course Jonavision and Street Sense, I guess. So Our Lady Peace, first time I'm seeing them live, which is going to be fantastic. Also really looking forward to seeing Matthew Good live again. I saw him last year with my roommate. Nick and I went to go see him at the Marquee, and he was touring sort of the Matthew Good Band. It's no longer Matthew Good Band, it's just Matthew Good, but he was touring Matthew Good Band's sort of seminal album, Beautiful Midnight, and released an EP, which if you have Spotify, you can actually get that EP on Spotify. I really highly, probably on Google Music too, I don't know. But anyway, I highly recommend it. Very, very interesting take on some classic tunes from the late 90s. Anyhow, really looking forward to seeing this show. Like I say, my girlfriend knocked it out of the park for the Christmas gift. So just absolutely thrilled to go see that show. So I'll let you know how it goes. I'll be sure to poke my nose out there next week with to let you know how that show turns out. That's kind of funny that I brought up Street Sense. That show has been on my mind a lot lately. So if you weren't around for it, or you don't live in Canada, it was a show put out by our public broadcaster here in Canada, CBC, that was sort of hosted by younger people, teenagers, and it was about how to sort of live in the world, I guess, and just trying to be savvy young people or whatever. It was a little bit older target demo than I was at the time, but I still watched it every once in a while. I think I liked just sort of the energy that the show had, even if the content kind of felt like the news sometimes. But I remember clear as day. They did this like expose on the little buttons that you press at crosswalks when you're waiting at like a red light to get it to change faster. And they did this test of, I think it was in Halifax, of a bunch of different crosswalk things to see if pressing the button actually had any discernible effect on the crosswalk thing. I think that that's changed because like they said at the time that it didn't seem to have any real discernible effect on how quickly the crosswalk will change. But I think that that's changed since then. But like ever since, like every time that I come to one of those crosswalk buttons, I always double think about whether or not I'm going to press the button, because it's just like, do I want to get these germs on my hands for what may be nothing? Of course, like there are some crosswalk buttons that I always press. There's one near my house where the light literally won't change because there's not usually traffic that comes out from that street. So I think it only changes if you press the button, basically, because, or if you're lucky enough that there's a car that's waiting to go straight rather than turn right on the red, which is something you can do here in Nova Scotia. Man, I'm going with weird tangent stories here. I remember when I was a kid, I was driving along in Moncton with my mom's dad, my maternal grandfather, and he had this quirk where he would narrate. And like, here's the thing: I'm like 8 years old at this point. He would narrate what he was doing in terms of his driving. So he would let me know, like, okay, well, we've come to a red light, so we have to come to a complete stop. But here in New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia as well, where you're from, you can turn right on a red light if there's no traffic incoming. And since we have no traffic incoming, I can make this turn. And just like, it was, I don't know, it's just one of those things that is always just sort of stuck in my head. I don't know why, but it just has. It just every single time I think about my grandfather giving me driving lessons years before I would ever step behind the wheel. Sit behind the wheel, probably more accurate there. I don't know. This has been a weird segment. Point is, I'm looking forward to that concert. Okay, enough of this weird little section. We're going to move on here from this point to talk about mighty Liverpool Football Club. We're getting to the business end of the Premier League season, and wow, we're staring down the barrel at a really good finish. I mean, Manchester City's winning the title this year. Like, don't get me wrong, but I feel really good about Liverpool's chances of having a good end to the campaign, and we'll talk about what that means, as well as Saturday's match against Newcastle United. Right after this. So we're officially into the business end of the soccer season, the Premier League season anyhow. Before I start talking about Liverpool, I actually just do want to acknowledge Saturday night into Sunday morning, the captain of Fiorentina in Italy, David Astori, passed away in his sleep at age 31. No details, really sketchy details, if any. Some really gross, like, clickbait articles floating all over the internet. It's way too young for anyone to pass away, particularly if they're somebody at the height of their lives. So the Serie A, the Italian league, suspended all games on Sunday in recognition of that, which I thought was a really classy move. And thoughts with his family and his loved ones and all the people who care for him. He's obviously a very loved man, as the captain one of starting defenders for Fiorentina. A fairly historic club over in Italy. So anyhow, talk about Liverpool